What if pain isn't the problem, but actually the pathway back to you? You're listening to The Leadership Wound, From Pain to Permission. I'm Amanda Rohrer, your host and founder of Authentically You, coaching for embodied spiritual living and leading. This is where we get honest about the real cost of leadership, the burnout, the pretending, the rejection, and the return to your authentic self. Because this isn't about performance, it's about permission. Welcome to the leader you've always been. Maybe it was simply the wrong room for the right calling. Or maybe, just maybe, there's a space already ahead where your presence is not only welcomed, but needed. Hey there, and welcome back to The Leadership Wound. I'm Amanda Rohrer, your host and guide, as we continue to peel back the layers of the real cost of leadership and what it might look like to lead from a place of wholeness. Today's episode is titled Rising After Rejection, Leaving the Grave Clothes Behind. If you've ever experienced rejection, whether it came through criticism, exclusion, being overlooked, maybe misunderstood, or even told in subtle or explicit ways that your way of leading wasn't valid, if that's you, this episode is for you. Maybe you've been told you're too emotional, or maybe your ideas were dismissed in a room that wasn't ready for you. Maybe you were left out of decisions or passed over for roles, or even asked to be someone you're not. These kinds of rejections cut deep, but they can also be a catalyst for rising. There's a moment often early on in our leadership journey when we start to notice that how we naturally lead doesn't seem to fit the mold. We try to bring our full selves to the table, our empathy, our sensitivity, our deep conviction, and instead of being celebrated, we get labeled. Too intense, too emotional, not assertive enough, or just too soft. Over time, these labels start to shape us, not just how we lead, but how we see ourselves. We internalize the message that our natural way of leading is somehow wrong. Let me pause here. What are the messages you've internalized about how you lead? Whose expectations are you still trying to meet? Maybe it's a previous or even a current boss, or a family member, a teacher, a professor. We all, at some point, have had voices other than ourselves in our head, either criticizing or judging us. So let's ask the bold question: who cornered the market on what effective leadership looks like? Because somewhere along the way, we were handed a very narrow definition of leadership, one that favors charisma over character, dominance over discernment, and performance over presence. Leadership at its core is influence, the kind that inspires others to follow, not because they have to, but because something in them wants to. And here's something worth wrestling with. Jesus never said, I want you to be a leader. He didn't put a call out for all leaders to come. Not once in Scripture do we see him calling people to a platform, to power, or to positions. What he said was, follow me. Pick up your cross and follow after me to a life of humility and service. The call wasn't about striving or status. It was about becoming someone who reflects the image of God. And in following him, in embodying love, humility, truth, and presence, we naturally begin to influence in ways that transform others. See, leadership is a byproduct of the true call to follow after Christ. So then true leadership doesn't come from self-promotion. It flows from a deep alignment with who and whose we are. It's not a defined personality style or method. It's not about being extroverted or assertive or charismatic. Leadership is simply the ability to influence, to guide, to inspire. And there are so many ways to do that. Your way of leading, when rooted in authenticity, is just as valid and impactful as any other. When we're told we're too much or not enough, it feels like rejection. And often it is, but what if that rejection isn't the end of the story? Or the truth about who we really are? What if rejection is actually the beginning? A doorway, not a dead end. Because here's what I've come to believe. The places where you've been rejected for who you are the very places where your truest leadership voice is waiting to be discovered. Rejection doesn't always mean you were wrong. Sometimes it means they weren't ready for you yet, or maybe you weren't ready for them. Rejection is not the end. It's an opportunity to take a step back and ask, is there still something for me to learn or grow into? Maybe it was simply the wrong room for the right calling. Or maybe, just maybe, there's a space already ahead where your presence is not only welcomed, but needed. We need to stop telling ourselves that rejection means we're not cut out for this, that we must not be a good leader. What does that even mean, you're not a good leader? Before you throw in the towel, let me offer you this. Your breakthrough might be as simple as shedding or taking off some old clothes, or cleaning out the closet and letting go of some old beliefs that no longer fit the person you're becoming. And in this week leading up to Easter, I can't help but think about the story in the Gospel of John. The moment when Jesus calls his friend Lazarus out of the grave. Lazarus walks out, resurrected alive, but he's still wrapped in the old grave clothes, still bound by the remnants of death. And here's what's striking. Jesus doesn't tell Lazarus to take off his grave clothes. He tells those around him, his community, his people, he says, unwrap him and let him go. That moment is more than a miracle. It's a picture of what leadership transformation can look like. Some of us have already experienced a kind of awakening. We've been called to rise up and step into new life. But we're still walking around wrapped in the old stories, the old patterns, the old shame. Our grave clothes are still on. And it's hard to remove those grave clothes if you can't even see you're wearing them. We need people who see us, who know us, and can help us shed the false self. Not because we're broken, but because we're becoming who we were always meant to be. Because true leadership begins when we leave the grave clothes behind. And let me say this gently, if you have been struggling to see and to remove those grave clothes, you were never meant to do that work alone. We weren't designed to untangle our wounds in isolation. Because healing happens in community, with trusted others who can walk with us, see us clearly, and speak the truth when we forget it ourselves. This is the heart of the Easter story, not just the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but the establishing of the kingdom of God on earth as in heaven. Now available to all of us, the entire world. And that he would be using people like you and me to introduce others to this type of freedom. Community is part of transformation and the unbinding of what has held us back. Jesus didn't just call Lazarus to rise. He invited others to participate in that freedom. He said, unwrap him and let him go. Help him walk out his transformation. We rise, yes, but we need others to help us leave those grave clothes behind. And that's exactly what I do as a coach. I walk with leaders who are ready to step out of old patterns and into their authentic presence. I help you name what no longer fits. I help you take off and walk in freedom because you don't have to figure it out all alone. Rejection does wound us, and there's not a leader out there who isn't walking around with their fair share of scars. But if you're willing to go back to those moments, to really look at them, we often find that our wounds tell a story about our authentic self. Sure, there are areas where we all need to grow and improve. But there are also places where we were told to hide parts of ourselves that are actually a sacred part of our leadership, of who we are. So I want to give space for you right now to take a moment and to ask yourself this question. What are the areas and wounds that you're still carrying that have not been healed? Be honest. What are the areas, the places where you've been told or even subconsciously believed that are just not true about you? Maybe it's your softness, but that's where your compassion lives. Or maybe it's your intensity, but that's the fire behind your vision. Or maybe it was your sensitivity. That's the power, your superpower for discernment. Or maybe it was your quiet nature, but that's the birthplace of deep wisdom. See, these aren't flaws. They are facets of your true self, and they are needed in leadership more than ever. And what if those very things are actually the keys to your most powerful leadership? To lead from wholeness, we must reclaim the parts of ourselves we've been told to hide. It means refusing to perform, refusing to strive for something polished or maybe palatable in order to fit into someone else's comfort zone. It means standing in the fullness of who you are, even when it's messy, and even when it's uncomfortable, even when it makes others uneasy. Because the truth is, leadership is not about fitting in. It's about showing up. And showing up with honesty, with vulnerability, with the courage to be fully you. And yes, it will be costly, but not nearly as costly as abandoning yourself. And here's the invitation this Easter season for all of us. It's to rise again, to walk out of the grave, even if you're still wrapped in the remnants of old beliefs or old patterns and old wounds. And it's to allow those closest to you, your community, your circle, to help you unbind, unravel the parts of you so that you can live again. Because resurrection doesn't always look like a dramatic rebirth. Sometimes it looks like a quiet courage, like letting someone else remind you who you really are. Sometimes it simply looks like leaving the grave clothes behind. You are not too much. And you are not enough. You are exactly who you need to be, to lead in the way the world needs most right now. Let that sink in. Let me say that again. You are not too much, and you are not enough. And if you're still wrestling with the labels, the expectations, the fear of being misunderstood, no, you're not alone. That wrestling, it's holy work. I want to tell you today, you have permission to bring the parts of you that were once rejected back to the table. You have permission to integrate all the parts of you into your leadership, because that's what embodiment is. It's integration of your mind, body, emotions, and spirit all together. And people who approach their leadership with wholeness are the ones who create spaces of healing, of depth, and lasting transformation, not only for themselves, but for those they are leading. Thanks for tuning in to the Leadership Wound. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm excited to continue this journey with you. If you're ready to stop performing and to start leading authentically, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and on my website, Authentically You. Until next time, lead like you.